Wow. Cloudflare blocked 21.3 million DDoS attacks just last year.
Yeah.
It's a 53% jump. It's like a digital tsunami every day.
It's crazy.
But luckily, this is Cybersecurity HQ,
Yeah.
and we're going to deep dive into all the critical news for January 27th, 2025.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the number of attacks, right?
Right.
How they're changing. I mean, we're seeing a shift from just kind of these brute force,
Right.
in-your-face attacks to these more like stealthy targeted campaigns
Right.
that are looking for those vulnerabilities, maybe the ones we don't even know about yet.
Oh, vulnerabilities. That's right. Remember Change Healthcare?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the news got worse. It's now doubled to 190 million people affected.
Wow.
Largest healthcare breach of 2024. And even after United Health paid $22 million
Oh, wow.
in ransom, they're still getting hit with extortion attempts from Ransom Hub.
Man, so this brings up such an important point. Just because you pay the ransom doesn't mean that you're safe. In fact, it often makes you a more attractive target for these future attacks.
Right.
Like, think about it. Black Hat, the ransomware gang,
Yeah.
they had access for 9 days before they encrypted everything.
9 days. That's a long time.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That shows a failure of so many different levels.
So what are the big takeaways there?
Well, detection, the
Mhm.
response, I mean.
Is it just that healthcare is inherently vulnerable?
I mean, it's definitely a high-value target, right?
Oh.
They're dealing with sensitive data, they're under pressure,
Right.
but that doesn't excuse bad security practices.
Right.
This breach points to systemic issues, like we need better security training, we need to update our systems, and we need to be proactive instead of just reacting to things as they happen.
So basically get ahead of the game.
Exactly.
Okay, stay ahead. Bolster those defenses. Train your people. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
But how about companies that repeatedly make the news, but for the wrong reasons? Like TalkTalk, the UK telecom giant.
Oh, yeah, I remember them.
They're back in the news.
Again?
Again, major data breach. A hacker called BDON is claiming 18.8 million customer records.
Oh, man.
TalkTalk's disputing the number,
Okay.
but they are admitting that a third-party platform was compromised.
So is this a case of just being an attractive target or just negligence?
Well, they were fined like a record 400,000 pounds back in 2015 for a breach. You'd think they would have learned, right?
You would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows like compliance isn't security. They could be checking all the boxes, going through all the motions,
Right.
but not really implementing, truly effective controls.
Okay.
And then on top of that, this whole third-party platform, and that just highlights like the weakness of relying on other companies for your security.
So you could have your house in order and then...
Yeah, it's like a chain, right? The weakest link breaks the whole thing.
That's right.
So, supply chain risk is a huge deal.
Yeah. This is getting a little scary. And speaking of scary, let's talk about mobile networks.
Right.
Researchers have found 119 vulnerabilities in LTE and 5G. And we're not talking about, just like data leaks. We're talking about like widespread cell service disruption.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, now hold on a second. I'm not sure I'd say widespread.
Okay.
I mean, to really exploit this, you need to have a lot of technical know-how.
Okay.
And you need access to very specific network configurations.
Oh, okay.
This isn't something, any hacker off the street can just do.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better. But imagine somebody taking down like a whole city.
I know.
Just with one packet of data.
Yeah, but they don't even have to be there.
Right.
They could do it through Wi-Fi calling.
Remotely.
Yeah, scary, right.
Yeah.
But the researchers, they did the responsible thing. They told the authorities and the telecom companies.
So are patches coming out?
Patches are in development right now.
Okay.
Being deployed as we speak.
So they're taking it seriously.
They're taking it very seriously.
Okay.
But, this does really show just how complex it is.
Right.
To secure all of these mobile networks these days. It's
Yeah.
billions of devices. It's always changing technology. And, the attack surface is global. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge challenge.
It's a lot. But at least they're on it.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes me feel good. Let's talk open source software.
Okay.
There's like a battle brewing
Oh, yeah.
over this static application security testing tool.
Oh, the SemGrep saga.
Yeah.
It's a great example of like open source, like the ideals of it, and then the whole like, how do you make money with it?
Yeah. Endor Labs just launched this thing called OpenGrep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a direct response to SemGrep
Okay.
because they locked all their features behind a paywall.
Oh, interesting.
So this new OpenGrip is like this totally open source alternative.
Like for Robinhood.
Yeah, kind of.
Of SaaS tools.
It's really cool. And we've seen this before, right? Like
Mhm.
Elasticsearch, HashiCorp. Like these communities, they get a set.
Right. They feel betrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think this OpenGrip is it gonna be the next big thing? Can it really compete?
Well, it's hard to say. It depends, like, how good is it, you know?
Right.
What's the community like?
Right.
Are companies actually going to, like, use this free thing?
Right. Right. Okay. Well, it's a battle worth watching for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears a bit.
Okay.
Talk about a new target. Building automation systems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So not just industrial systems anymore.
Right. So according to Forescout's report, attacks on these systems jumped from 1% to 9%
Whoa, that's huge.
in 1 year.
Wow.
So we're talking office
Right.
buildings, hospitals, even your house.
Right.
Why the surge?
Well, I think there's a few things going on. One, these systems are all getting connected to the internet,
Right.
so bigger attack surface.
Right.
Second, they control really important stuff.
Right.
Think HVAC, lights, security. So if you can disrupt those, it's a big deal.
Right.
And then third, security's just not been a priority.
Right. It's an afterthought.
Like they just kind of tacked it on at the end.
So it's like a perfect storm. We got these interconnected systems,
Yeah.
critical infrastructure, and then lack security.
It sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. It definitely has the potential to be a real problem. We need to change the way we think about this.
Right.
Both the companies that make these systems
Right,
and the
right.
people that use them.
Okay.
Security has to be part of the design from the very beginning.
Not an afterthought. Speaking of things that need to be baked in from the beginning, let's talk about a vulnerability discovered in a tool that's used by millions of developers.
Oh, what's that?
Git.
Really?
Yeah.
Git.
Yeah.
This researcher, iot-security, found vulnerabilities in Git's credential handling system,
Oh, no.
which could allow attackers to steal your login info.
Man.
The flaw comes from how it handles certain characters,
Okay.
and that opens the door for, like, malicious repositories
Wow.
to just snag your data.
So even the tools that we're using to, like, build and manage software could have these security flaws. It seems like nowhere is safe these days. Like, how did this go unnoticed for so long?
That's a great question. So what can developers do to protect themselves?
I mean, it's a good reminder, even the stuff we use every day can have problems.
Right.
Security is not a one-time thing. It's a process.
Yeah.
Always be updating those security patches, reading the release notes,
Right.
and be careful what you download.
Especially from other sources, yeah.
Yeah,
Make sure you're updated, folks, if you're using Git.
absolutely.
Update. Now, how about a story that sounds like it's right out of James Bond?
Okay.
Researcher found this vulnerability in Subaru's Starlink,
Oh, yeah.
which could have allowed attackers to remotely control cars.
Wow, this is a big one. As our cars become more connected,
Right.
more reliant on software,
Mhm.
they're more vulnerable to these cyber attacks.
Of course.
And this vulnerability,
Yeah.
I mean, they could track where the car is,
Right.
unlock the doors,
Well,
even start the engine
remotely.
remotely. Scary stuff.
It's pretty scary. So, yeah, technology is great,
Yeah,
but it also introduces these risks,
it does. I mean, this is a wake-up call.
right?
For the car industry, we got to prioritize security from, like, day one.
Right.
We have to be transparent about the problem
Right.
and quickly fix them.
So really a shared responsibility between the manufacturer, the
Absolutely.
software developers,
Yeah.
and the consumers.
Yeah, we all got to play our part.
We all have a role to play. Okay, let's talk cybercrime.
Okay.
FBI and Mandiant, they're warning about this surge in extortion attempts by people pretending to be IT workers.
Really?
And they're linking this to North Korea.
Interesting.
So these guys, they get into corporate networks by pretending to be like legit tech support
Right.
and then hold data hostage for ransom.
Wow. That's really scary. It plays on people's trust.
Right. Yeah. You think you're talking to
Yeah.
the IT guy,
Right.
but really,
It's someone far more nefarious.
Right. So what's behind this? Why this shift in tactics?
Well, I think it's probably a bunch of things.
Okay.
There's more pressure on North Korea, sanctions, law enforcement,
Right.
ransomware is becoming more profitable.
Right.
And honestly, these attacks they're relatively easy to pull off.
So what can companies do?
Be careful who you hire,
Okay.
do your background checks,
Right.
check references,
Right.
use multi-factor authentication, Trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Okay. Good advice. Now, remember that crazy DDoS stat we talked about at the top of the show? Well, we've got a culprit. 5.6 terabits per second attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Hit an Asian ISP. New record.
Wow.
It was launched by a Mirai variant botnet.
So these DDoS attacks, they're just getting more powerful, more sophisticated,
Yeah.
leveraging all these, compromised devices, a lot of them IoT devices, just to overwhelm the target.
So it's like a zombie army.
Exactly. A zombie army controlled by a puppet master.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are the trends? Like, what are we seeing out there? What are the new things?
Well, the attackers are always trying to find new ways to, amplify their attacks,
Right.
get around the defenses. We're seeing multi-vector attacks where they're combining different attack types.
Okay.
So it makes it really hard to defend.
So what can organizations do?
Well, they need a layered defense,
Okay.
good network infrastructure,
Okay.
DDoS protection services,
Right.
proactive threat intelligence, and they need a plan.
Right.
If they do get attacked, they got to know what to do.
They got to be ready.
Yeah. Preparation is key.
Okay. Preparedness.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the lasting impact of data breaches.
Okay.
Our school,
Mm.
leading student information system,
Yeah.
they had this massive breach, could impact millions of students and teachers.
Oh, man.
We're talking like decades of sensitive data.
Wow.
Medical info, academic records.
So this is a real problem.
Yeah.
It just reminds us that, these data breaches can come back to haunt you.
Years later.
Yeah. Even information from, years ago can still be valuable to attackers.
So what's the challenge?
Well, protecting student data is tough.
Okay.
Schools often don't have enough resources.
Right.
The technology's old,
Right.
and they don't have enough people who really understand cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's not their expertise.
And then, you have to balance security with access.
Right. Yeah. Students and teachers need to be able to
Exactly. They got to do their jobs.
do their jobs. So it's hard.
Yeah.
But what are some steps that schools can take, like practically speaking?
Well, they can do things like implement strong passwords,
Okay.
use multi-factor authentication,
Right.
control who has access to what,
Right.
train their staff and students
Right.
on the basics of cybersecurity,
Right.
and they can, get help from experts.
Yeah, bring in the big guns.
Yeah, people who know what they're doing.
Right. Right. Okay, so it's a shared responsibility to protect our kids.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a look at the world of ethical hacking now.
Okay, I like this.
So PRE2-owned Automotive,
Oh, yeah.
it just wrapped up.
Uh-huh.
Hackers actually exploited vulnerabilities in all kinds of car systems,
Cool.
EV chargers,
Uh-huh.
infotainment systems,
Right.
telematic systems.
So this is great. It's a safe way to find these problems.
Right.
And get them fixed before the bad guys find them.
So it's like a controlled demolition, right? So what were some of the takeaways? What should we be paying attention to?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that modern vehicles, they have so many ways to get in.
Right.
The attack surface is huge.
Yeah. It's not just about joyriding anymore.
No.
It's about data.
Yeah,
It's about control, maybe even doing harm.
it could be.
So what can the automotive industry do to stay ahead of the bad guys?
Well, they got to build security in from the start.
Okay. Security by design.
Yeah, and they got to test their systems.
Okay.
Make sure they can hold up.
Right. So basically just stay vigilant. Okay, final story in this segment. We're going back to cybersecurity policy.
Yeah.
Trump administration made this really controversial move.
Huh?
They disbanded the Cyber Safety Review Board. That's the CSRB.
Oh, yeah.
It was a key initiative of CISA.
Right.
They were responsible for investigating those big incidents like SolarWinds, Microsoft Exchange Online attacks.
Right. So why would they get rid of that? I mean,
It's a good question. It has a lot of cybersecurity experts worried.
I bet.
They're saying it weakens this independent oversight.
Makes sense.
This board was doing good work. They were identifying risks. They were recommending ways to improve.
Right. So what's the other side of the story? Why would they do this?
That's the question, right? The administration hasn't really given a clear explanation. Some people are saying it's just like streamlining,
Okay.
cutting bureaucracy.
Okay.
Others are saying that they're just downplaying the importance of cybersecurity.
Wow.
We don't know. Only time will tell.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
But it's definitely something we're going to be watching.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
Stay tuned. We'll be back with more cybersecurity news and insights.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on. Cybersecurity is like always changing.
Always changing, yeah.
Yeah. And so the rules have to change too, you know?
Yeah.
And speaking of change, it looks like a lot of cybersecurity companies are uh, getting a lot of funding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are a few startups that just got a bunch of money.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So it seems like investors are pretty confident about this sector.
Okay, so it's like a gold rush
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
for cybersecurity solutions.
Mhm.
We've got Dry Run Security. They raised $8.7 million
Oh, okay.
for their AI-powered application security platform.
Wow.
Then we've got Doti AI.
Uh-huh.
They got $7 million for their enterprise knowledge platform.
Nice.
And Axoflow grabbed $7 million
Okay.
for their security data curation platform.
Hmm.
What's driving this? What's going on?
I mean, it's a few things, right?
Okay.
The threats are getting like crazier, more complex.
Right.
And companies are realizing like, hey, we need to protect ourselves.
Right, yeah.
And investors, they see dollar signs.
Of course.
Right. They see an opportunity, and those startups, they're just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
We're seeing like tons of innovation all over cybersecurity.
That's pretty cool.
Threat detection,
Yeah.
data security, privacy. It's an exciting time to be in this field.
It is exciting, but the bad guys are always innovating too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Always one step ahead.
Speaking of which, SonicWall,
Uh-huh.
they had a critical zero-day vulnerability in their SMA 1000 series.
Oh, no, that's bad.
Yeah. Attackers could take over your system remotely,
Oh, wow.
and they're saying that it's already being exploited.
Yikes. So this just goes to show, how important it is to like patch your system.
Patch.
Yeah, these 0 days, they're scary because like nobody knows about them until it's too late, right? The
Right.
vendor doesn't know, so
Yeah.
there's no fix ready. It's like you're just waiting for the bomb to go off.
Right, so it's a race against time.
Mm.
So practically speaking, what can organizations do to get better at patching?
Well, first you got to know what you have,
Okay.
right? Like make a list of all your systems, all your software, even the stuff from other companies.
Okay.
Once you know what you have, you can figure out what's vulnerable.
Okay.
And then you got to have a plan. Like, how are you going to test those patches?
Right.
How are you going to roll them out? Don't just like install them without testing.
Right, don't just blindly click, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got to be careful.
Hmm.
Now, speaking of vulnerabilities, remember that old jQuery vulnerability from 2020?
The one from, like, forever ago?
Yeah. Well, CISA just added it to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. That's the KEV catalog,
Okay.
which means it's still being used by attackers, even though there's been a fix for years.
Oh, wow, that's like leaving your front door unlocked?
Yeah, exactly. You think, oh, nobody's going to break in here anymore. It's been years.
I mean, they've moved on.
But nope, some attackers, they like to go for the low-hanging fruit. So how can organizations deal with these old vulnerabilities?
Good question, yeah.
Well, they need a vulnerability management program. That means scanning for them regularly, figuring out which ones are the most dangerous, and then fixing them.
Okay.
And then, making sure they actually get fixed, like tracking the progress.
Right, so accountability, okay.
Exactly. And don't forget about training your employees, telling them why this stuff is important.
Right, get everybody on board.
Yeah, exactly. It's an ongoing battle, but it's a battle worth fighting.
Mm.
Now, this next story, it just shows you how everything's connected in cybersecurity.
Okay.
So Conduent, they're a big company that provides government services.
Okay.
They got hit by a cyber attack.
Really?
Yeah, it messed up payment processing in Wisconsin and customer service lines in Oklahoma.
Wow.
So it's a good reminder that just because you outsource something
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're off the hook for security.
So basically, even if you trust your vendors, you still got to verify that they're doing the right things.
Yeah, exactly. Do your due diligence, right? Ask them about their security policies, their procedures, what happens if something bad does happen, their incident response plan.
Okay.
What kind of training do their employees get? How do they protect data? Are they following all the rules and regulations? It's a lot to think about.
It's a lot, but it's important.
It is. Okay, now let's talk about something that's becoming more and more common, malvertising.
Oh, yeah. Those bad ads.
Exactly. So there's this campaign targeting Mac users who use Homebrew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're using fake Google ads to trick people into downloading malware.
But even if you're on a website you trust, you could still get hit.
Exactly. Malvertising is sneaky. It takes advantage of the trust we have in, like, websites and ad networks.
Right.
So the attackers, they hack into these sites and networks,
Right.
and they use them to spread these bad ads. And if you click on them, bam, you're redirected to a malicious website, or you download some nasty malware.
Yikes. So what can Mac users do to stay safe?
Well, be careful what you click on. Don't just trust ads, even if they're on a website you know.
Right, okay.
And keep your Mac updated, install those security patches,
Okay.
and you might want to use an ad blocker.
Okay, to block those bad ads.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to reduce your risk. Now, for something a little more technical, the FBI and CISA just released this detailed analysis of how Chinese hackers broke into Avanti cloud service appliances.
Okay, so they're like sharing their secrets.
Yeah, kinda. They're
Uh-huh.
showing us exactly how these hackers did it, what vulnerabilities they use, what tools and techniques they used.
So like giving us the playbook.
Yeah, it's like a blueprint of their attack.
Yeah.
Really valuable for security researchers and incident responders.
So we can learn from their mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are some of the big takeaways? What can defenders learn from this?
Well, it shows how persistent and skilled these hackers are. They used a bunch of different things. Known vulnerabilities, custom malware, and some pretty clever techniques to get into these systems and then stay there.
Oh, wow. So they got in and then they just hung out.
Yeah, they establish persistence. It's also a reminder that you got to be proactive.
Right.
Vulnerability management, patch management, threat intelligence, that stuff's all important.
So it's not just about reacting to attacks, but trying to prevent them in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Now let's talk about a threat that's been around for a while, but it's still evolving and causing problems. Botnets. There's a new one called Murdoch.
A Murdoch.
It's targeting Avtech cameras and Huawei routers.
Oh, interesting. So not just computers anymore.
Right. So this Murdoch, it's a variant of Mirai.
Mirai, the one that caused all those huge DDoS attacks a few years back.
That's the one. And it works by exploiting vulnerabilities in IoT devices, like cameras, routers.
Right, those things that are always connected.
Exactly. Turns them into a zombie army. And then they can be used for all sorts of bad stuff.
DDoS attacks, stealing data, spreading malware, the whole 9 yards.
So even those devices that we don't really think about as being, computers,
Right.
they can still be a problem.
It's a good reminder that anything that's connected to the internet can be a target. So what can people do to protect their IoT devices?
Good question.
Well, first things first, change the default passwords.
Okay, yeah, that's like basic security 101.
Right. But a lot of people forget about it. And if your device allows it, enable automatic firmware updates.
So you get the latest security patches.
Exactly. It's all about keeping those devices up to date and as secure as possible.
Okay, so basic cybersecurity hygiene, but for your toaster and your thermostat.
Exactly. Everything's a computer these days.
Right, okay, that makes sense. Now, for some good news,
Yeah.
Pandyun Automotive just wrapped up, and nobody hacked a Tesla.
Really? That's impressive.
I know, right? So even though hackers got into other systems, like those EV chargers, infotainment systems, they couldn't break into a Tesla.
Wow. Good for Tesla. It seems like they're really prioritizing security.
Yeah, it's good news for Tesla owners, but it's important to remember that no system is perfect.
Oh, absolutely.
Hackers are always coming up with new tricks. So Tesla and all the car companies, they got to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, they can't get complacent.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to policy one last time.
All right.
Trump administration, controversial move, disbanded the Cyber Safety Review Board, the CSRB.
Oh, yeah, the board that investigated those big cyber incidents.
Exactly, the one we talked about earlier. And a lot of cybersecurity experts are worried about this.
Yeah, it makes sense. It seems like a step backwards for cybersecurity.
Right. And the administration hasn't given a clear reason why they did it.
That's not a good sign.
Some people think it's just about making government smaller,
Okay.
cutting red tape. But others are saying it's a sign that they don't care about cybersecurity as much.
Wow, that's concerning.
It's definitely a move that's got people talking.
Yeah.
And we're going to be watching this closely to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. This could have big implications for the future of cybersecurity in the U.S.
Welcome back. We've got a few more stories before we wrap up.
Yeah, some important ones that show, you got to always be on your toes.
Yeah.
We're talking about threats that are going after specific platforms,
Okay.
taking advantage of devices you might not even think about,
Right.
and tricking people into giving up their information.
So sneaky. Okay, let's start with something for those Mac users out there who love homebrew.
Uh-huh.
There's this really sophisticated malvertising campaign that's using fake Google ads to trick people into downloading malware.
Oh, man. So it looks like legitimate software?
Yeah, but it's not. They've got this fake website that looks just like the real homebrew site.
Oh, wow. That's tricky.
Yeah, really sneaky.
So even experienced people could fall for this.
Totally. So it just shows you can't trust everything you see online,
Right.
even if it looks like it's from a place you know.
Okay, so always double check those URLs.
Yeah.
Be careful about clicking on ads.
Right.
And really look at anything you download.
Especially if it's from, like, some weird source you've never heard of.
Exactly. Don't just click on things without thinking.
Right. Be proactive. Be skeptical. Okay, let's talk about a report that's been making the rounds. The FBI and CISA released this deep dive into how Chinese hackers got into those Ivanti cloud service appliances.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's like a master class in nation-state hacking.
They're showing us exactly how they did it.
Yeah, all the vulnerabilities they use, the tools, the techniques, really valuable stuff for anyone defending against these kinds of attacks.
Okay, so what are the big takeaways? What can we learn from this?
Well, it shows just how good these hackers are. They're persistent, they're skilled, they used a combination of things, vulnerabilities that were already known, custom malware they created themselves, and some really clever techniques to get into those systems and then stay there.
So it's like they got in and just set up camp.
Exactly. They establish persistence. It's a good reminder that you can't just focus on building a strong defense.
Okay.
You also got to be proactive, vulnerability management, patch management, threat intelligence. Those are all important.
So it's not just about reacting, it's about anticipating.
Exactly. You got to be hunting for threats. Don't just wait for the alarm to go off.
Definitely not.
Okay, let's talk about botnets. They've been around forever, but they're still evolving.
Right.
There's a new one called Murdoch,
Murdoch, okay.
and it's going after Avtech cameras and Huawei routers.
So not just computers anymore.
Right. It's a variant of Mirai.
The one that caused all that chaos a few years ago.
That's the one. And it's taking advantage of vulnerabilities in these devices, the ones that are always connected.
So they can be used to launch those huge attacks.
Exactly. DDoS attacks, stealing information, spreading malware. It's a good reminder that any device that's connected to the internet can be a target.
So what can people do to protect themselves?
Change those default passwords. That's the first step.
Right, that's Security 101.
Exactly. And make sure you're keeping those devices up to date. Install those firmware updates. Anything you can do to make them more secure.
Okay, good advice. Now for some good news, remember that Pune-to-own automotive competition we were talking about?
Yeah, the one where they try to hack into cars.
Yep, well, nobody managed to hack a Tesla this year.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So even though the hackers got into some of the other systems...
Right, like the chargers and the infotainment systems.
Yeah, they couldn't crack a Tesla. So it seems like Tesla's doing something right.
Yeah, they're definitely taking security seriously.
Which is good news for Tesla owners. But, we always got to remember, no system is perfect.
Oh, for sure.
The bad guys are always coming up with new tricks.
Absolutely.
So everybody's got to stay vigilant. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise.
My pleasure. It's always good to talk about this stuff.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about cybersecurity, the better you can protect yourself. So be sure to check out CybersecurityHQ for all the latest news, analysis, and job postings. And don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. It's read by over 70,000 cybersecurity professionals.
Stay safe out there, everyone.
CybersecurityHQ, your hub for jobs, reports, news, and a newsletter read by 70,000 plus professionals weekly.